Hello there, I'm TrackerTD, and it's time for some games of the year. 2019 was a fairly god-awful year for me on a lot of fronts, but it's finally come to its miserable close, and that means it's time for me to talk about the one thing I can take solace in, even in the worst of years. Video games. The only problem is that, much like last year, I ended up barely buying much this year, and even then, some of the stuff I did buy is absolutely not going on a Games of the Year list. Team Sonic Racing! So, this year, I'm playing with the format a bit, and by that I mean I'm doing what everyone else seems to do nowadays, and making this a list of the best games I played this year, but not necessarily the best games I played that came out this year. This just widens my selection, since if you pay attention to my channel or my Twitter, you'll probably realise I play a lot of older stuff. So, without further ado, let's get underway. These are the best games that I played for the first time in 2019. I can hear you now. Tracker, you've sold out. You've lost your gamer cred. You're a filthy casual. But hear me out. When I first played Fortnite on Nintendo Switch, I wasn't too impressed by it. It was another shooty game. Yeah, whatever, throw it on the pile. Then a few friends wrote me into playing it with them on PC, and my view of the game changed entirely. On your own, Fortnite isn't particularly exciting, but throw in some friends, and it becomes chaotic, almost like a party game in how frantic it can ultimately be. Beyond shooting, there's all sorts of silly stuff to do in the overworld, like boat time trials, or leveling buildings, or making your own ridiculous buildings with questionable structural integrity. The Battle Royale setup it provides is honestly a brilliant way to constantly raise the stakes, and it's so satisfying to actually use the real superpower of teamwork and screaming to win a victory royale. And it's totally free too. Yeah, you could spend money on all the cosmetics and stuff, but I'll take my free tree skin and use it for the rest of my life. Sorted. The game's also not too bad to look at either. Generally, I'm not a fan of the aesthetic titles like Western MOBAs and MMOs have gravitated to, but Fortnite skins offer enough variety that there's probably at least one character design you'll appreciate in there somewhere. The world is fun to explore, and despite its size, you'll grow accustomed to what you're doing and where stuff is fairly quickly. Even then, the game frequently mixes things up with minor events and tie-ins. For example, recently my squad's focus shifted from win the game to find the nearest lightsabers so we can do silly acrobatics for the rest of the game. And then we won a game with our silly lightsaber acrobatics. But that's the thing. No two games feel the same. One match, you'll end around in the first 5 minutes after landing into a war zone and probably getting massacred. Other times, things will come down to the wire in a sniping match between two snowy mountains. It's brilliantly exciting. I'm glad I gave Fortnite a second chance, especially in light of it being a bit of a punching bag in hardcore gaming communities. If you've got friends on hand who are interested in it, I think it's definitely worth taking for a spin. And you've not really got anything to lose because the game is free. So, yeah. The Italian plumber claws his way into my list, with the sequel to probably my favourite game on the Wii U, for another round of making the Mario. Super Mario Maker 2 sorts out pretty much all of my complaints regarding the first game, with just the addition of slopes allowing for much more organic terrain generation. While they've not been super regular, the game's also received some very helpful updates, so now you can do crazy stuff, like add a completely different gameplay style into the mix with Link. The story mode is also a welcome addition over the fairly cut and dry presentation of the Nintendo-made levels in the previous game, and they do a great way of showcasing what you can do with the tools in Mario Maker 2, as well as just being fun to play. The Endless Challenge is both a great way to kill time, and also a great way for high score junkies to get their fix, and the recently added speedrunning mode with the ninjas is also a very welcome addition, considering how addictive speedrunning levels can be. I have a few world records on levels myself, even if it's just the ones that have barely any players. This is also helped by the fact I have friends with a decent sense of level design to them, so even when I'm not having a great time making levels, I'm usually having a great time playing them. I prefer my Mario levels kind of more traditional, and fortunately I found a surprising amount to cater to my interest in Maker 2's level pool. Speaking of friends, it's great being able to play with them now. I will concede that the online play is a car crash, but the option is appreciated, and locally I think it's still a blast to test levels together or build them. While your mileage may vary, I'm not too surprised that Mario Maker 2 ultimately became my most played game of the year. I've clocked around 50 or so hours in it so far, and I'm hoping Nintendo continue to support it with even minor new features. I think it's turned out to be a great suite for bringing Mario levels to life. I frequently state that if you haven't jumped into the adventures of Kiryu Kazuma yet, you're missing out on what's arguably Sega's premier series at the minute. I'd heard mixed things on Yakuza Kiwami 2, mostly from fans of the original, so I was hesitant to pick it up at first. Fortunately, my friend Sonic very kindly bought it for me just before Christmas, so I sat down to head back to Kamurocho once more. And holy hell, this is some good bloody Yakuza. Kiwami 2 feels a world away from Kiwami 1, which, while a fine game, generally just felt like an expansion pack for the sublime Yakuza 0. The Dragon engine is out in full force, with absolutely gorgeous graphics and the ability to integrate physics into combat in absolutely ridiculous ways, and massively reduced load time amounts. I've yet to play Yakuza 6, so this is my first time experiencing the Dragon engine, and it sure is something. And because I have a pretty good PC rig now, it all moves at a fairly buttery smooth 60 FPS. The story kept me going, even if it gets a bit ridiculous with how many twists it tries to cram in at the end, and I just on the whole loved the world in this game. I also greatly appreciated one thing in particular, the new bouncer missions. Not because they're particularly amazing, just because they're a really obvious shout out to Nagoshi's old beat 'em up Spike Out. Yakuza's trademark blend of humour and drama is here on full show. You can be bathed in blood, ready for a grueling showdown with a brutally tough opponent, and then finish him off by shaking salt in his eyes. Then there's all the ridiculous submission stories, which often prove to be the highlight of the Yakuza titles. Yakuza 2 had no shortage of iconic moments, such as Kiryu fighting literal tigers, or the bizarre fight adult men dressed as babies sequence, and they're lovingly recreated in the Dragon engine here. I also think I enjoyed the new EXP system more than how things worked in previous games. It let me prioritise how I wanted to progress my stats and abilities according to my own tastes in a way that was more accessible and streamlined than the somewhat odd skill tree setup from previous games. Given how popular it seemed to be in Yakuza 0, the return of the Karabei Club is sure to be a welcome addition for many, and while it's not my cup of tea, it and the new Majima construction tower defense stuff are almost entirely optional, which is how I like it. It's something on the side with solid rewards for those who check it out. On the whole, Kiwami 2 was another engrossing entry in Sega's Yakuza series. Now I just have to sit here and hope the remastered collection or even Judgment get a PC port in the near future, because Yakuza has properly established itself as a tour de force in Sega's lineup. Fingers crossed Yakuza 7 turns out alright for that matter. A very, very late entry onto this list, I only picked up Gurren in the final days of the Steam Winter Sale. A friend recommended it and I thought, hey, it's £2, what's the worst that could happen? Well, the good news is that Gurren is far from bad news. It's an extremely competent blend of action role-playing with platforming wrapped up in an extremely cute and endearing package. In Gurren, you play as a young girl whose default name is Parin, and after you befriend a village of monsters who promptly get their stuff wrecked by some phantoms, it's up to you to retrieve all of their material wealth and put a stop to whatever the Phantom Prince is planning. One of the first things to really strike you about Gurren is the aesthetic style. It looks right out of a lost Dreamcast game or something, and that makes sense given it was originally a 2004 PC title. It's bright, cel-shaded, and it makes great use of textures to make the characters and their expressions really pop out and look animated. This presentation and how it harkens back to a bygone age also manifests in the voice acting, though perhaps more questionably. The English dub is delightfully hammy and has a surprising amount of established talent. Quinton Flynn, Robin Atkin Downes, Tara Strong and Steve Bloom all show up, and given they share a voice director, it's no surprise that this is basically a Metal Gear Solid reunion in the voice acting department. Amber Hood does a superb job as the extremely sassy Parrin, and the writing is genuinely entertaining. As for the all-important gameplay, in Gurren you run around with a drill staff and drill things. It's an odd concept, but very satisfying in practice, with a levelling up system that works almost exactly like Cave Story, another game that I love. Like a regular RPG, you can score critical hits, but they're timed to the rhythm meter at the top, attacking time to the music to deal better damage. It's a clever way of making critical hits feel less random and more skill based. You can also get new equipment to build up your strength or improve your abilities or give Parrin stuff like regenerating health, amongst other things. And then you can upgrade that equipment even further with more and more perks on top. There's a lot to do in the game beyond that, such as going for gold medals in every stage, which takes more of a Crash Bandicoot approach, in that you have to destroy, say, every pot in a level, as well as beating every enemy in a level. There's also tons of costumes to unlock, and I mean there are tons of costumes to unlock. For completionists, this can easily go from a 10-hour game to a 70+ hour one. Gurren was a wonderful surprise to cap off my year, and I think you could do far, far worse for its regular £7 asking price on Steam. The game also received a PSP port, and most recently was released on 3DS. But bear in mind, I've heard some mixed things on these ports. While the PSP did add some new costumes, I believe both ports removed the rhythm meter, which, while not a total deal breaker, is a bit of an odd choice. Either way, I would say you can't go wrong with Gurren, and it's definitely worth a look. And so that brings us to number 1, which was conveniently a game that actually released in 2019 this time. Astral Chain is the latest in Platinum Games' storied line of character action games, and in my opinion, it might just be the greatest they've ever done. Astral Chain is like a marriage of Platinum's efforts so far. The back catalogue shines through it in ways that had me smiling all the way through. Obviously, the fast and frantic action of pretty much all of their titles is well unaccounted for, but nuances, such as how you can guide your Legion partner in various ways to utilise specific abilities, felt like placing Wonderful 101's gameplay into a more traditional title. There's a blade mode that's almost ripped right out of Metal Gear Rising, and the slow motion effects that often occur during battle harken back to the satisfying dynamic style of Bayonetta or even Transformers Devastation. There's a great amount of content in Astral Chain too. The main campaign takes a good deal longer than your average Platinum title, and there's a slew of side missions in each level, to the point it almost feels like somewhat of a hybrid between the totally open world nature of Nier Automata and something more linear and level based such as Bayonetta. There's some great level design, and it often rewards exploration in ways you wouldn't expect. And there's so much variety in combat. As well as having all the different legions and their unique abilities at your disposal, you can mix and match them by unchaining them to really rack up the damage and combos, as well as upgrading them all to pull off even crazier stuff. The game is flashy, and there's a notable learning curve here, but when it clicks beautifully. It's also got a story I found quite gripping, and a fun cast of characters, and I don't mean apparently fan favourite Marie, who I honestly found to be one of the weaker characters, and also the one that has spurred me to switch the dub to Japanese. Rather, I love the company of the supporting characters such as Olive, Jin, or Hal, who play a more active role in your adventure. The world you fight through is technically a futuristic hellscape, but despite that it is a beautiful hellscape. In fact, I'd say this is one of the nicest looking games on Switch, and I didn't have too many issues with the performance either, although this is mostly providing you're playing in docked mode since the resolution takes one hell of a hit in handheld mode. The superb presentation also extends to the soundtrack, which is sublime. Legion Assault and the Neuron Headquarter theme are some standout tracks. Customization also helps put a game up in my estimations, because I'm shallow like that, and I had plenty of fun just messing with designing my character. You can even change how the heads up display looks, which was both cool from an aesthetic and accessibility standpoint. Overall, Astral Chain is simply one of the best titles on Switch right now, and absolutely the best game I played this year. When the combat clicks, it's so satisfying and the game oozes style without skimping on the substance. If it went under your radar, I'd say this game is definitely worth picking up. And so that was my 2019 in video games. I think there's a clear moral to this. Buy Sonic Mania. What? I didn't mention Sonic Mania in this video? But I mentioned it in the last two, we have to keep it up somehow. Game of the Decade, Sonic Mania! Sorted. Have a good night everyone, see ya.